that you have yet to sign off on this proposal, and your predecessor, John Kelly, rightly rejected it. Is this policy still under consideration, and what is your position?
Thank you, ma'am, for the question. I'm not familiar with the specific example that you provide, but I would just say under TVPRA, when an unaccompanied child or a child presents itself at the border and we cannot confirm that they're with a parent, we have to follow the protocols to assume there's a possibility they are trafficked. So just to be clear, one is a policy, which I know is your question I'll get to, but I just want to make sure that we also, of course, want to take care of the children who come here and make sure that they actually are with somebody who is a family member or who can take care of them. With respect to your question, we have not made any policy decisions. We are in a position where we are trying to be able to promptly remove those we apprehend. What we find at the border is, given a variety of court cases, we are forced in conjunction with the HHS to let children after 20 days, we can no longer detain them. So what that means is once we release a child, we then release their parents as well. So we're looking at a variety of ways to enforce our laws to discourage parents from bringing their children here illegally. But no, ma'am, no policy decision has been made on that, and I'd be happy to work with you and look at other alternatives.
Well, how big a problem is this?
UACs is a big problem. As I said, we've seen a 30% increase in just the last few months and a 68% increase in so-called family units, which in some cases include very young children.
And what is the current policy as to how to handle this? Say the child is young, part of a family. What happens?
When we encounter the child, whether they're part of a family unit or not, we try to detain them, if you will, in a family unit. But in some cases, given a variety of court cases, they are treated as an unaccompanied child. In that situation, we turn them over to Health and Human Services after 72 hours. Health and Human Services then looks for either a parent located in the United States or another sponsor who will come forward and care for that child. If we are not able to bring that child to court within 20 days or otherwise adjust or determine their status, we must let them go.
How many do you bring to court within 20 days?
Not enough. I don't have that figure we can get back.
So,
but what we do find is that 90% of those released never show up for court. 90%.
They just disappear?
Yes, ma'am.
So what do you think the solution is?
I think we have to look more broadly at all of the different rules and how they are put together. I think we need a comprehensive approach. There are quite a few loopholes. For example, it should be clear if you're unaccompanied or not. If you're with your parents, you should be treated as a child coming with your parents. If you're unaccompanied, perhaps we have different duties and we need to look at that child in a different way. They also should not, in my opinion, receive any additional benefit. They need protection, but for example, right now they have not only 2 bites at the apple in terms of our immigration process. They go through a regular process and the immigration courts, but they also have well over a year in which they can claim asylum. If you are an adult, you have a year in which you can claim asylum.
You said they can claim asylum.
The children, yes, ma'am.
The children?
Yes.
How young can you be and claim asylum?
I wonder that myself, but the point being that you can be here many years as a so-called unaccompanied minor and then claim asylum. So it's a problem because, unfortunately, the way that the coyotes and others have provided information to them, they realize that there's a loophole. So they can wait many years before they make that claim. And frankly, what that does is that just adds to our backlog. We have hundreds of thousands of cases in backlog. It's very important for us to be able to focus on those who, of course, truly need asylum, but they sometimes are buried within the larger numbers of those who perhaps do not need asylum.
How do you assess the size of this problem? Is it a major problem? Is it restricted just to some areas and some groups of people?
I would say it's a growing problem because, unfortunately, what we find through interviews of those that we do apprehend at the border, they have the magic words, if you will, of credible fear. The standard is quite low. That's something else that we have asked as part of our discussions to work with Congress on. There are those who truly do fear for their lives. We need to be able to protect those. But there are many others, unfortunately, we find who are trained by those who are trafficking them to just use those words. And given the laws in court cases, we must immediately treat them as if they are seeking asylum and put them into the system.
How many children now do you have in custody in this situation?
That I can get back to you. I don't know the number.
You?
Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate that. The administration's decision to terminate temporary protected status for Haiti, Nicaragua, the Sudan, and El Salvador looks like it's going to have a significant economic and humanitarian consequence. TPS holders work in key industries, as you know, performing a lot of indispensable jobs, and they're important. Additionally, it looks like this is going to have an adverse effect on children. It's my understanding that around 273,000 U.S. citizen children have a parent who's a TPS holder. And it's my understanding that El Salvador requested that this designation for its nationals continue, expressing concern about whether they could manage the return of some 200,000 individuals. Can you just tell us some of the arguments that El Salvador made in support of TPS designation and why those were not persuasive?
Yes, ma'am. I did have the opportunity to speak to a variety of government officials from El Salvador. In our discussions, they were very concerned about the time period in which it might take for them to be ready to bring back their citizens. We did not talk generally about the country conditions, and I want to be very clear on this. The law does not allow me to look at the country conditions of a country writ large. It requires me to look very specifically as to whether the country conditions originating from the original designation continue to exist. In this case, the 2001 hurricanes in El Salvador. So we didn't dispute the country conditions are difficult in El Salvador, but unfortunately the law requires me, if I cannot say that the conditions emanating from the earthquake still exist, regardless of other systemic conditions, I must terminate TPS. So the discussion was around the time period. The reason that we delayed it for 18 months was because they were persuasive.
Do you believe the law should be changed?
I believe
maybe we should take a look at that.
I think we should take a look at it, absolutely. I think and I know there are some bills that have been proposed to do just that. This was meant to be a temporary status, as you know. The difficulty with that is when people are here for 20 plus years, in the case of El Salvador, they have roots. They're contributing to the society. They're otherwise making our economy strong. So yes, we do need to look at this and find a better way to come up with a permanent solution.
Would you be willing to work with us in that
Absolutely.
regard? Good, thank you.